how easy it must be to create brand love or a really compelling brand experience if you're an energy drink or you're an action sports brand. But what if you're a bank? So let's start at the top and have a quick look at how banks brand and market themselves traditionally. And it's very much the Ogilvy era style of marketing, the big ideas, the lifestyle branding, the campaigns and so on. We'll have a quick look at some of those. Very much lifestyle, American Express, looking at My Life. Here we have Pinnacle Bank, looking at very much another lifestyle, touchy-feely style as if it was an advertisement from the 80s. And then again, Chase, once again with its card, Life on Your Terms. Very much how we've been marketing banks for the last 20 or 30 years. If we could summarize it, how would we do it? From your side, Jamal, Paul, how are banks marketing themselves today? What seems to be the mode?
Well, as you say, it's that old model of awareness, advertising, positioning, all those kind of words. But ultimately, it leads to storytelling, and consumers just aren't interested. And what we're really looking for are banks that are story being, like doing things for you that no one else is going to think of or go to the lengths to do, so that we then go and tell our friends and our family about it. So for me, it's moving them away from those metrics of awareness and actually much more about recommendation and sharing, and that would change the way that they did marketing.
Right, so let's talk about recommendation and how you actually get that being a bank. How to get people talking about a bank? Let's look at this example. This is ANZ Bank, the GATM. What do we know about this story?
Well, this is a fantastic, for me, example of a bank doing something for their consumers and for a scene and a particular group of people that they want to build empathy and recommendation with, and it's just a great idea. But I think a lot of banks would say there's lots of things that they can't do because they have lots of rules and regulations, and actually, risk is not one of the things that they can add to their marketing. But then when you see examples of this simple way of building the brand within the gay community in Australia, I just think it's a great example that banks can do things which get people recommending them, and build brand love.
I'll tell you what's something interesting about this one, Jamal. ANZ's a very large bank down under, and they've got the largest marketing budget of any bank. Spend a huge amount above the line on TV campaigns. And the one campaign that gets the most awareness and coverage is this one. Very, very simple, very, very true. Just painting a few ATMs, media pick up on it, and people share it. So you don't need the big campaigns, you don't need the big dollars. I think this is a really good example of just being smart and just connecting with your audience.
Absolutely, and there's data we'll come on to later, which poses the question: do banks need to advertise? Do they need to spend all this money on advertising, or actually do they need to come up with more of these smaller ideas and investments for their consumers, which get them talking about it and recommending the bank to others? It's harder to do, and it's a change in the way that they've done marketing for the last, how many years. But it's proof that if they do move to this new model, it does work.
Yeah, well, I think too, when you've got sort of legacy systems and big legacy revenues and these legacy attitudes, it's really hard for these guys to change. So it takes someone who's brave to really get out there and go, hey, look, we're going to challenge the status quo and do it differently. And I think you've got some great examples coming up of banks actually doing that.
Well, let's talk about some of those examples, starting with what the customer actually wants and then build the examples around that. It's interesting when you actually talk to customers, what they want is quite simple. Often it's the common things done uncommonly well. And if we look at this slide here, a survey from Compete asks customers what they chose their bank on in terms of criteria, and convenience came up number one in terms of location and ATM. And in number two as well, have other account at this bank. Once again, it's convenience. We're creatures of habit. And if you look at the third and fourth criteria for selection of bank, it's experience and ease. and fifth is recommendation from a friend. You've got to go right down there and look at the bottom of that list, and saw, heard, advertisement. That was the factor. Only 6% of customers chose a bank on that factor. And interestingly as well, just under 9% chose their bank based on a portfolio of services. So product and advertising was actually way down there. And it was convenience, ease of use that drove bank choice. So we'll look at how you actually do that, because it sounds easy, but actually often being simple is the most difficult thing you can be in marketing. But let's have a look at who's getting it right. We'll go to the UK. A little bit difficult to see this data here, but we'll zoom in a minute. This is a survey of financial brands ranked by their customers. And it's what's interesting, if you zoom in at the top here, First Direct, One Account and Co-Operative Bank, Smile. These are the top 4 banks. They're all small banks. First Direct, which we'll talk about as a case study, is a subsidiary or owned by HSBC, a much larger bank. But what you can't see in this list is way down the list, all the big banks. So all the big national, international banks are bottom in terms of ranking by their customers. But right at the top, the small banks, First Direct, there, 93% of customers rank this bank as, satisfactory or good when it comes to current accounts. It's phenomenal in terms of data. And we'll just look at what that is all about. We'll talk about people experience and First Direct's frontline. Jamal, you've got experience working with First Direct. What can you tell us about what they actually do? This is a bank that doesn't advertise like the big guys. How do they create that experience? How do they get that 93%?
Well, they are, a bank without, as you say, without any retail. So they purely exist through the phone and through their platforms like online and through their apps. So what they've done is they've focused on giving the best possible service and experience they can, to the point where if you go into their call centers, there is a dedicated team, a people experience team, whose job it is just to increase the happiness and the energy levels of the call center staff. So that's anything from, making sure that they're celebrating the right kind of, moments, that they're, doing stuff for them if they can't get out at lunchtime. But most importantly, they're really empowering their staff to make the kind of decisions and give the kind of service that they would be proud of. There's a story I was told recently of a woman who was taking her family on holiday and had lost her wallet, and phoned up First Direct to cancel the cards. But, more to the point is that she couldn't then take her family on holiday. So what this just call center assistant did was get off out of his chair, go to the airport and actually take out money from his own account to give to this family so that they could continue on their holiday. So we talk about empathy, but empathy is only really groundbreaking when it's turned into action. And there's lots of examples of just people that will phone up First Direct because they know that they'll get through first time, or they'll have someone to speak to, and someone that actually is listening, that's not, worried about a script. So, I just think that they are, so far ahead of the competition in the way that they sort of really treat their customers. And as you said, are a sort of skunk works incubator for HSBC. So everything that they're learning, they'll then apply to HSBC, the sort of the bigger Goliath bank over time.
It sounds to me like the stories we hear about Zappos, and we talk about Zappos in the book. Here's a brand which people talk about in the same respect. There's the story of the woman who phoned up and, she was looking for a pair of shoes for her wedding and so on. Those kind of stories where the call center operative goes way beyond the expectations and, do something remarkable that people want to talk about. So what actually creates that kind of culture? Because I'm sure you guys have been in this situation. You've worked with brands, and brands have said to you, hey, we want to create that culture in our organization. And once that goes through the mill, often that can just come out as changing the furniture, putting in some bean bags, right? Rather than making some real fundamental changes. We talk about the brand love model in the book, people, culture, and metrics. How does a bank actually create a culture where you can get 93%, customer ratings, be top of the list? What is required beyond changing the furniture and putting in beanbags? What do you need to do?
Well, it comes back to there is a real mission that they're on, from the CEO at the top all the way to everyone in the call center, which is to be real pioneers of service. Go back to Zappos, and it's to wow with experience. It's when we talk about brand love, we're talking about raising people's ambition with the marketing. Raise it. Not just doing the easy stuff. Just aiming far higher. And I think we know that service in banking is incredibly important with all of the different touch points. That's what people are looking for, convenience, but then service on top. So they're utterly aiming for the stars. So you have a culture in a call center where the CEO is on the same floor, open planned office as all the call centers. So everyone's on that shared mission. And so I think because of that, they've got a real energy to what they do, just like Zappos, so to over-deliver with every call that comes in and create that recommendation.
So you've got the three elements there. The culture aspect, you've talked about creating an open office. You've creating this environment where people feel that they can make decisions without constantly having to refer back to their management. They can easily talk to the CEO. They've got the people aspect. I'm sure there's a big aspect, when it comes down to recruitment. They see recruitment as a key aspect of creating the brand, and metrics as well. I mean, you talk about creating wow experiences. Well, the way Zappos does that, it actually measures this stuff, right? It asks customers, did the call center rep wow you? If you don't ask and you don't measure it, it doesn't happen, right? So you've got to put all these aspects in place to become a brand that people really love. And I suppose to really do that as well, you've got to do something different. I mean, we have a look at here at First Direct's advertising. It says here, picture a row of birds chirping. We're the one beatboxing. The unexpected bank. I'm just curious, what kind of culture, what kind of people really create this kind of bank? You've got to decide to be different. That sounds like quite a tall order to ask for a bank. Banks are traditional, quite conservative, right? What kind of changes need to happen here?
Well, that if you look at it from the inside, it is just, fantastic people, with great positive energy who are, empowered with an unexpected service. So the opportunity to do something that wows the customer every time, and that creates the First Direct brand, and the recommendation. So it's true. They're unexpected in the way that they want to. Their marketing is to get you as a customer to tell your friends and your family about that experience. And that's what I think that these guys have got totally right. It's not about the advertising. It's not about relying on that. It's relying on the service that they create, which has made them so incredibly successful.
And a key change here, isn't it, is the shift from being a top-down organization to a bottom-up one in terms of ideas and, how can you create a better service for customers? Let's talk about that case study example here with ASB, Paul. What's going on here? This is a real demonstration of a bank which is understanding it's got to do something expected and drive ideas from the bottom up.
I just love this as an example. So I think it really happened by accident for a New Zealand bank, right, that had a very young marketer join their team. And he was used to engaging with his own age group, and came up with this idea internally to offer free fives when students signed up to their debit card. And it ended up being one of the most successful campaigns that the bank ran that year. So no agencies involved, just a young guy just challenging it, coming up with a solution, a campaign that he knew that he would like and his friends would engage with. So I think it's just a really good example of looking within and actually empowering your staff to actually do things, try things. You've got very little to lose. I just think it's a wonderful little example.
Paul, you've actually had experience with yourself being a CEO of a mobile telecoms company of actually doing this, right? What is the lessons that you can share with people who may be in the same situation in telecoms or banks in terms of empowering young staff to be involved in the decision process?
Well, what I really like, if we go back to Jamal's case study there, the fact that HSB could have easily looked at this and said, okay, let's outsource the call centre to, Philippines or whatever to save money. But they've realised that, your frontline staff are so valuable. That is your marketing team. So full credit to those guys actually converting their call centre into their marketers, and it's clearly working. So what we're seeing is what we do with the telcos is to empower your frontline staff is really important, but you need the systems in place that allow them to go out and be themselves as well. It's very hard in a banking environment where it's heavily regulated, so there are controls, but you can empower your staff to come up with some ideas, and this ASB one is a perfect example. You don't need to rock off to the agencies to come up with these campaigns. Your staff know more about your products, and your frontline staff know more about your customers than any third party does. So just sit down with them, come up with ideas, try it, track it, see what happens, and evolve it. That's the best way to approach this. And hey, look, the banks are great. You can start with 1 or 2 stores. You don't need to go bank wide. It's a beautiful thing. They've actually got these assets. They've got frontline staff. They can try different things.
And there's things they can do as well on the technology side that can really help. We look at this example here from First Direct. This is how they can do it without having to go through traditional regulation. You can build a conversation, a dialogue with customers, and this is really something that can feed back into your frontline staff, and they can connect with each other when they're not talking with each other on the phone. This reminds me a lot of how Starbucks is really winning that battle in the fast casual dining market by creating a dialogue with customers through My Starbucks Idea. First Direct is doing something similar here. It's a lab. They understand that it's all beta. It's not a finished product. It's something that people want to get involved in, but it gives people ideas and feedback, as it says at the bottom here. Quick question, tell us what you think. It says 87% of lab users think that offsetting is a smart way of managing your money. So they're getting an idea of what people want, which they might not get through traditional marketing or through traditional market research, right? What kind of other things can they do? What kind of other things could you do with your frontline staff, your call center, your retail staff, to really get a better idea of what customers want?
I think the number one thing that needs to happen in these organisations, and I'll probably get shot for saying it, is people fall under marketing and not HR. As soon as you realise that your people are your most valuable resource as a marketing resource, it changes your attitude internally. Whereas what I see with my banking clients, they still treat their frontline staff, HR take over, and it's very procedural based. And I think that's a mindset they need to overcome, and they need to make those changes internally.
Right. Your brand is your people, right? At the end of the day, that's what people interact with. And if we ever need an example of it, let's have a look at Apple. 62% of Apple US employees work for Apple stores. This is not an IT brand. This is a retail brand. This is a company that's committed 2/3 of its employees to the front line, to talking to people every day. If you want to buy an Apple product, you go to the Apple store, you get wowed by the Apple Genius experience, and you go away talking about it to other people. And now Apple are in the banking market. There are a whole host of brands now with great customer relationships, brands like PayPal, Apple. We've now got Facebook, Google are in that space. These are brands that can outmaneuver, far more agile than banks, and are now becoming banks through the back door. What do we make of this? What's our advice to financial brands staring this down?
Well, for me, it goes back to the HSBC example. A few years ago, they created an incubator, which was First Direct, at a time where phone banking was fairly new. We've now even moved on, so that now all the new entrants coming in, you've got Simple Bank in America that know that the insight is that people want to interact with their banks on their phone. So from an app point of view. So like now it's kind of wild, wild west where, if you've got a good idea and you've got a good brand, you can create your own bank, which might have more empathy and affinity with consumers than the major banks. So I think that banks have got to be really aware of doing things differently and probably partnering with unconventional brand partners that have huge fan bases to create their own banks, to create, to change the model, because otherwise they're going to be sort of boiled alive slowly.
And it's a good point about partnering, isn't it? Because they can learn not just about the customers, but they can learn about how to do these things, right? If they partner with somebody like an Apple or a Google or a Facebook, they'll learn how these companies interact with the customers. So I think there's a real benefit in doing that, not just from getting access to a new base of customers, but from learning the whole brand experience, building brand love thing as well, right?
Absolutely.
Change the model. I like that, Jamal.